2, 1 through 12. It's printed in the back of your bulletin if you'd like to follow along. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Lord, give us new eyes to see your word. Be in these words, we pray. In your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Growing up in my parents' home, it always seemed like summers there was a vacation in store. We went and did something. I remember one trip that we did, the Grand Canyon. That was one of the coolest moments. Don't really have much words for it. We visited the North Rim and the South Rim, and were able to do that. We did this all by car, so there was this big road trip in the middle of all of that, and so so it was this Lasley kind of vacation thing, and not similar at all to the National Lampoon kind. So it was a good moment, great time. We had our adventures. I remember one time, if you were around during the first moon landing, during that moment, I think it was 1969, 68, somewhere around in there. We had just started off on a vacation to the Southwest. We were headed for the Grand Canyon, and noticed that the car was doing something odd and funny, so we stopped in Joplin. We were stuck in Joplin for 9 days. And the joke was that they could get the Lasleys, they could get the people to the moon, but they couldn't get the Lasleys out of Joplin. Had to get a new short block for the Chevy that my dad was driving. Anyway, it was always an adventure. We always learned something, no matter where we were. Whether if we were stuck in Joplin or at the North Rim of the Grand Canyon, we were seeing amazing things and meeting interesting people. That was just what happened with us. There was a time when we spent several summers and went up to Butternut Lake up in Wisconsin and had a great time. And met some girls from Racine, but that's another story completely. It was a good moment. It was a great time. But the point was, after all of that, I kind of got this desire to travel. This thing that it was okay, and that there was stuff out there. There was a big old world that I needed to go see. So when I got out of college, I'm skipping over the year that I spent traveling with that acting group, but that's a different story completely. We were on the road for a year and meeting some amazing folks. So we got out of college, and there were like 2 job opportunities for individuals with bachelors in social work. So I took one of them because the other one turned me down. And so I went to work for the Red Cross. And so I traveled with the Red Cross for a while. They said that their only downside was that you might get shipped all over the world, because I was working with the bunch that worked with the military. And so I thought, oh, that's not a downside, that's a positive, so let's do that. So I did that for like 17 years, and I went to Korea for a year and 3 hours and 27 minutes. And hated the first half of it, loved the second half, because I got that idea that I wasn't going to have a good time, and I figured that I was. Made all the difference in the world. All the difference in what you would expect. You're going to see when you go to a foreign place or a different spot. I was fortunate to spend some time with 20,000 of my closest personal friends during Desert Storm in Saudi Arabia. Camped out with those guys for about 5 months. That was fun. Then I figured out that I worked for the wrong boss, and Elizabeth Dole was the chairman of the American Red Cross at that time. Lovely lady, just very nice person, but she's not God. So I figured, well, you know what? I need to work for the right boss. So I surprised my wife and my boss at that time and told him that I was going to go into the ministry. So we started this. And I've been absolutely blessed to be in some pretty amazing churches. This one, Bismarck, Fredericktown, a couple in Sykeston. And we've met amazing people. Along the way, we've been on some mission trips, and so had a chance to do a couple of trips to Nicaragua and one to Costa Rica, and every single time when I expected to find amazing people in the presence of God, that's exactly what I found. Every single time. Along the way, right before my ordination, we took the class of us, folks that were going to be ordained during that year. We went on a trip to the Holy Land. Now, at that point, Israel was too hot to go to, so politically not temperature, but so we decided that we were going to go someplace. We were going to do Paul's journey in Turkey. And one of the places that we went was Istanbul. And so when I heard the news this morning about the massacre that had happened in a nightclub in Istanbul, I know that I had been not too far from that very place. I'd met people, some absolutely delightful, wonderful people in that very city. They weren't foreigners, they weren't strangers, they were friends. I found that I went there at that time expecting to find the presence of God, and I did. And now that part of the family of God that I know is hurting. But that's what it means to go and expect to find God. It's not safe, it's not comfortable, it certainly stretches us beyond our comfort zones and our level of feelings that we're in a spot that we can be safe in. It takes us out of those places. But that's what it takes to get out there to find the children of God. To have those expectations that you're going to see someone that will be God's presence to you in your heart means we've got to get out of our little comfortable spot. Quite frankly, friends, we need to get out more. Our safe, well-crafted lives may be safe. And getting out of that may be scary. But what we gain by risking the world out there has to be more important, more valuable than just staying home and pulling the covers over my head and being so worried that I can't get out. I've got to get out. I've got to be out there because that's where God's children are. God's children that rejoice, God's children that weep, God's children that will walk with me, and some that will never. But I expect to find nothing less once I leave my door. Our wise men that Justin just read about just a few moments ago. They were in this same process. Their expectations were that they would find the King of the Jews, born in some place. They didn't know where. The star wasn't really terribly clear about where they would find this new connection to God. We need to stop for just a second and talk a little bit about these wise guys. Okay, Magi. In no translation that I have been able to find so far does it say that they were kings. They weren't. That's not anywhere in the Bible. We have kind of papered that over the story because it sounds great and it makes that song really cool that we just sang a few moments ago. Okay, We Three Kings. They weren't. But what they were astrologers. They were specialists in reading the signs in the sky and probably listening to what was going on around them. They were most likely from a religion that was like 2,000 years old by the time this story happens, called Zoroastrianism. It's a monotheistic, generally monotheistic religion that has its roots in ancient Persia, and actually was the state religion in Iran until about 600 or so AD, when Islam became the new state religion in that area. These guys, and by the way, we have no idea if there were three or not. That was just the number of gifts that they carried. We figured that nobody wanted to come empty-handed, so there had to be three, right? Yeah, we don't know. Bible doesn't say how many, so there it is. But these individuals were so motivated because you know what they expected to find? When they got to the end of their very long, very dangerous, very arduous journey, you know what they expected to find? They expected to find a connection to God, between God and humanity. That was something that was just really in touch with their faith system, and they were very connected to the Hebrew system because there were a lot of things that they shared. That monotheistic, that one God kind of image was something that not everybody in the Mediterranean had in common, but these two faith systems did. And so they came to find a moment when the one God had made God's presence known to humanity. They embarked on that dangerous, hard journey because their expectation was nothing less than to find God. Now we have the benefit of having our perspective of after that moment. Now remember, when these men, we were pretty sure they were just guys, but when these individuals came to Bethlehem, when they got to that moment, when they got to the house, this was sometime after the manger moment, but when they got to the house where Joseph and Mary and Jesus were staying, they knew that they were in the presence of God. They expected to find it. Their eyes and hearts were open, and that's exactly what they found in that time. We have our perspective to add to that because we now can layer on all of the message and the teachings and the presence and the salvation that Jesus offered throughout his entire life, throughout his death, throughout his resurrection. We know that their expectation was played out because that certainly was God among us. Emmanuel. So what are your expectations? What do you expect to find? When you leave your door, when you embark on your journey, when you go see friends, when you go on vacation, when you go to visit someplace, when you get the nerve to step out of the door, what do you expect to find? If we have our eyes open, if we expect to find God, I guarantee that's what you'll find. Just like this. If your expectation is something else, that's what you'll find too. That's the scary part. If you expect to find an enemy, that's exactly what you'll find. If you expect to find a friend, that's what you'll find too. And you may have to look pretty hard for both of those because we like to have our expectations realize. We like to have that moment when our selves are affirmed by that, and our expectations are, if I'm going to expect to find someone that's not going to like me, yeah, that's going to happen. I may have to look a little bit, but yep, I'll find him. Do I expect to find a God that loves me? Yes. It's what has made absolutely every trip either wonderful or horrible in my life, and I'll bet you yours too. Once we learn to look for God everywhere, at the end of our journey and even along the path, we start to look for God everywhere. You know, there are a lot of normal people out there, and one of the things that I learned, you know, whether it was in Turkey or Nicaragua or Saudi Arabia or Texas, yeah, even Texas, God's everywhere. Normal people are everywhere. Normal individuals moms who just want the absolute best for their children. Dads who absolutely want just safety for their family and hope for the future and some way to live a life. Families that just want normal, and quite frankly, there are a lot of normal people around there, around the world. And they are, I guarantee you, infinitely worth meeting. When you get to that moment when you feel a little scared, a little concerned, maybe you're a little worried about what you may find out there, I guarantee you that the person that you meet is going to be worth the trip if we just expect to find the presence of God within them. That's the joy. And the world is full of these, quite frankly, normal people. If we just look past some of the superficial differences that, quite frankly, most of them just really don't matter that much. Yes, some do, I get it, but quite frankly, if that person looks a little different than you or speaks a different language than you, that's just the stuff on the surface. Where's their heart? And can you find the presence of God in them? Because once we get past our fears, once we get past those prejudices that we've carried for many, many New Years up until this particular moment in time, once we get past that, you know who we meet? We meet God. We meet our family. So that's my hope for you. That's my prayer. This is a very simple message today. I want you to go. I want you to get out. I want you to get out more often and get far, get long, go different. Find some place where you've not been. And as you go, actively look for the presence of God there. I tell people that if you're on vacation and you got a Sunday morning where you can, go find a church. It doesn't have to be a Methodist church. Go find a church somewhere. Bring home a bulletin, because that way I know you actually went. And I get some of my best ideas on worship planning out of that. But as you're going, the reason I ask you to do that, go find God. The best place to do that is probably in church, because that's where, we talk about that. But don't end it there. We go looking for the presence of God, with the checkout person at Walmart. We go looking for the presence of God at all kinds of places. At the gas station where you stop and fill up your tank. The guy that's filling the car on the other side, you don't know his story. You don't know how broken he is or she is. But a kind word and a good moment, that can bless both of you. So I challenge you to go on that journey of discovery, to find God at work all over the place. It happens when we open our doors and we step out into God's creation. It happens when we open our hearts and meet a new member of God's family. It happens when we open up our hands to lift someone up or allow someone else to lift us up as well. It's all about what we expect to find once we get out there. It is nothing less than God waiting. Go and see. Amen.